All right, hello class. I'm here to talk to you today about um, a practice in Hollywood known as Hollywood accounting. Hollywood accounting is a method that the studios use to account for the revenue and the expenses of individual films, and it has some surprising things that happen. So, for instance, if we look at some movies that have been made in maybe the last 10 or so years, you're going to find that the vast majority of them made no profit. So, for instance, um, one that dates back a while, which is Return of the Jedi, um, they reportedly grossed $475 million worth of revenue. Their budget was only $32 million. So you'd assume that they came in at $433 million in profit. And the fact of the matter is, based on the accounting, it's showing no profit whatsoever. Another example, Coming to America with Eddie Murphy. That particular film had over $350 million in proceeds, and they basically said the movie made no profit. Therefore, the producer, Art Buchwald, he took Paramount to court, sued them, and ultimately ended up with $900,000. We also have some producers for the Batman series starting in 1989. They basically said that the accounting deprived them of their lawful earnings and so forth. But they actually ended up losing that case. Another one, Winston Groom. He's the author of the book Forrest Gump, which, of course, I'm sure everybody has seen. That book has, that movie has basically, it's on every year. I see it on TV. I see it on, Netflix and places like that. It's made a fortune. Yet the author of the book, he signed a contract, and that contract basically gave him 3% share of the net profit. And he also got $350,000 for the rights to make the movie. And ultimately, he got $250,000 for helping to write the screenplay. The movie's never made a profit, so his 3% share has ended up being worth nothing. Another one, Spider-Man. Stan Lee is the co-creator of the character. He had a contract that awarded him 10% of the net profits of anything based on his characters. 2002, Spider-Man made more than $800 million in revenue, yet the accounting seems to indicate that the movie made no profit. So, in essence, his 10% of the net profits ended up being zero to this point in time. Ultimately, Stan Lee sued Marvel Comics, and I don't know what the result was. Another example, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Very, very small budget. I think it was less than $10 million. It grossed over $350 million just at the box office. And for the most part, the producers say it made no profit. All right, so that brings us to the actual process that takes place. And here's the way it works. Let's say you want to make a movie, and you turn around and convince the studio to fund the movie. You've already secured the rights to whatever book it may be, and so forth. So you're ready to go. So the studio creates a brand new corporation, and that corporation is there for the sole purpose of producing this movie. And which is one of the reasons why you see when you go to the movies and see all the credits, you see all these different company names popping up. Those are all the producers and various parties, companies that have been set up. And in any event, the production company is what the studio is going to fund. Okay, so they transfer funds to that particular company. That company then signs contracts with the various and sundry cast and crew and other folks, and off to make the movie. When the movie itself has been done, edited, and approved, then it goes to distribution. When it goes to distribution, then obviously you're starting to get revenue coming in from the box office, DVD sales, foreign theatrical releases, and so forth. That's when the fees kick in. And the fees are actually by contract. For instance, the studio is going to charge a production overhead, and it's usually calculated out to be about 15% of revenue. There's going to be a distribution overhead fee, and that's going to be somewhere around 30% of the revenue. Then there's a marketing overhead fee, and that's going to be somewhere around 10%. So right off the bat, you got 30, 40, 55% of the gross is going straight back to the studio as an overhead fee. Now, that doesn't mean that the studio has spent that amount of money on marketing and so forth. It's just that by contract, a certain percent of the revenue is what's going to be charged to the production company. So what's really happening here? The production company is indeed paying out the cast and crew whatever amount they're owed. That's going to be based on the contract. Everybody, regardless of whether the movie gets released or not, gets paid whatever's in the contract. The only thing that doesn't get paid is the share of the profit. And that's totally dependent upon whether or not the movie ultimately shows a profit. In most cases, the production company does not ever show a profit. Therefore, there is going to be no sharing in the profit. So what's really happening is basically that the movie studios are, in essence, taking all the cash that's coming in from the box office, from the DVD sales, from foreign rights and whatnot. It's all flowing to the production company. And by charging these fees, they're in essence moving the cash from the production company back to the studio. And I have an example I'm going to show you in just a moment. But one of the little side notes here is in 1983, Return of the Jedi was released, and it obviously did very, very well. I think it was upwards of 500 million in revenue, relatively small budget, certainly under 40 million. The guy who played Darth Vader was paid for his performance, but his contract also said he was entitled to a certain percentage of the net profit. In theory, the movie has never made a net profit. Therefore, the guy who played Darth Vader has never received a dime in residuals as a result. So the best thing, if you are, for instance, a well-known actor like a Tom Cruise, or you carry enough clout, then you can put into your contract that you want to have a percentage of the gross. This is the percentage is going to be paid to you based on the proceeds, and that is before expenses. So if you're a Tom Cruise with the Mission Impossible films, I don't know what his actual contract is, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was 4 or 5% of the gross. So you can well imagine the amount of money that comes in if you can take it off the top. However, if you're not as well known or you're part of the crew or what have you, then if you share in any profits at all, it's going to be as a percentage of the net. And we've already seen where most of these movies never ever net a profit. So hang on, I'll bring it over here. there was one financial statement that got leaked from Warner Brothers for the Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix movie. And it's the only one that's ever been released. It was obviously somebody was upset with the studio and released it. But in any event, you can see this is distribution report number 4. The date is September 30th, 2009. And this is for the last 12 months. This is cumulative since the release of the film. It was released in July 2007. So if we look at this thing a little closely, you're going to find that you have, first of all, revenue sources up here. So you got domestic theaters, you got non-theaters, television, you got foreign theatrical releases, foreign television, pay TV, DVDs, some miscellaneous royalties here and so forth. In any event, the total gross that this film has generated through September 30th, 2009 was $612 million. However, at this point, there's still $2.3 million that have not been received yet, which means the actual cash coming into the production company is almost $610 million. All right, so there's no reason to think this film's not going to be very successful. But right off the bat, what do you see? Distribution fee, $211 million. Okay, that's a percentage of the proceeds. So I don't have my calculator here, but if you do the math, take 211 divided by 609, it's probably somewhere around 30%. Okay, so that's funds that go straight from the production company right to the studio. So now if you look at that, now the production only has 398 million. All right, now we got to get to our expenses. Right off the bat, I got $29 million just to print the various and sundry copies of the film. You got some more costs here as far as editing and subtitles and whatnot. That's about $5 million. And then look at this, advertising and publicity, $131 million. Okay, that also is a straight percent. It is a percent of the amount of the gross. Okay, it has nothing to do with how much the studio actually spent on advertising. It's simply a mathematical calculation. All right, you got some other things down here. You got some taxes, trade association fees, freight, health insurance, and so forth. Down here, $10 million, that's guild, union, and residual payments. That's basically the cast and crew getting paid whatever was in the contract. Okay, so now we're down to 206 million in profit after paying all those expenses. And now look what happens. Here we go. We have negative cost and or advance, $315 million. What this is basically is that's the loan that has to be paid back to the studio. Right underneath it is the interest of the cost of the loan. That's $67 million. Do the math, and you can see this film currently is in the hole $167 million. Now, the longer a film is out there, yes, it will make some more revenue, but the revenue stream will start to slow down. And every time they have $1 in additional revenue, 55 cents of that dollar is going straight to the studio. Now, the studio, when they're called on the carpet about this, they basically say, well, wait a minute, we have to do this, because if we don't, the only movies that are going to get made are going to be those that have the same, successful genre, same successful producer and director and actors, and we're not going to try anything on anybody new. So basically the ones that are successful have to help pay for the ones that are not successful, or the ones that never get released. Plenty of movies never ever get released during the course of the year. A good example was back with 9/11. There was several films that had been completed that had scenes of the World Trade Centers, which of course got destroyed during the attack on 9/11. the net result was the studios basically put those films, took them and decided not to distribute them given the circumstances. So even though there was a big cost to produce those movies, they never ever got released. Will they get released in the future? Maybe, maybe not, but more than likely it was just a sunk cost. So that is Hollywood accounting. I think you'll find that it's a very unusual practice. That being said, it's not illegal. It's perfectly legal. Everybody signs a contract that works on the production, and that contract spells out exactly who's going to get what in terms of wages and whatnot, and what their percentage of the gross or net profit share is. And these financial statements will then get sent out for those parties that are involved in the production. And if you're sitting there waiting for a percentage check to come to you from the percentage of the net profits, forget it. You're never going to see it. All right, that's my presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.